Hi, I'm Brett, your neighborhood lab tech. Welcome back, and today I'm going to walk you through the osmosis in plant cells experiment. So before we begin, we want to make sure we have all of our equipment. We'll need a potato, a ruler, a knife, cutting board, maybe some tape or some way of marking some cups or containers to hold your experiment, tap water. You'll need some salt. I forgot to get that out. Salt. And a clock or a timer. And what would be handy if you have a kitchen scale or any other scale that has a fairly accurate measurement to at least 1 gram resolution, or 0.1 gram would be even better. That would be great, but not absolutely necessary. You'll also need some measuring tools, though. Just standard kitchen measuring tools is fine. All right, so the first part of this process, we need to make a salt solution. It's going to end up being a very concentrated salt solution, maybe around 14%. And you'll want to dissolve 2 tablespoons of salt into 1 cup of boiling water. So I'm going to go ahead and get some just plain old tap water here and measure out 1 cup. And I'm going to get this boiling on the stove. So we'll get that boiling here. And while that's heating up, put a lid on it, I am going to measure out some salt. So actually, I'm going to do this on in one of these cups. And I'm actually also going to weigh out the salt so we can figure out the concentration a little more exactly. So we're going to get 2 tablespoons of salt. All right. And it looks like 2 tablespoons of salt weighs about 33 grams. 32.7 for being careful. So, okay. So once again, we'll go back to the stove and we will wait for that water to get near boiling. I'm not going to make you wait with me. I'm going to pause the recording. All right, it looks like our water is boiling now. We're going to go ahead and add the salt. And that is going to kill the boil. It's going to need to boil even, or get even hotter before it will come back to a boil. Now I'm going to stir that up a little bit. We want to make sure the salt is good and dissolved. Although again, this experiment will probably work even if it isn't. So. Okay. So I'm going to keep stirring that. You don't need to keep watching me as I stir it. After your salt is dissolved, you're going to want to let it sit for quite a while until this solution gets to room temperature. So we want to make sure that temperature is not a confounding variable in this experiment. So I'm going to take this off the stove and let it sit for a while. All right, it's probably going to take quite a while for your salt solution to cool. I've got a thermometer, so I'm just going to check and make sure that it's about the same temperature as the room temperature water. So it's 17.5 Celsius, 18.6 Celsius. They're in the ballpark. I actually cheated. I put the pot in some cool water. If you're in a hurry, you can do that. But if you're not, you can just let it sit on the stovetop or counter until it cools all the way down. All right, so now it is time to cut our potato slices. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to get a couple of cups and I'm going to label them. I'm going to label cup number 1 as being just plain tap water. And cup number 2 as being the salt water. And for the potato slices, we want to have slices that are about 7 centimeters long by 1.5 centimeters wide and about 1 centimeter thick. And again, the exact measurements don't matter as long as they're comparable in size and there's enough surface area to actually have some fluid exchange. So actually I'm gonna set some of this potato aside as a control. But I'm not gonna cut the control piece yet, just in case it loses some fluid sitting out on the cutting board. Sure. Potatoes I'm using are kind of old, so they're a little bit less turgid than they would normally be. So now I've got 2 comparable pieces of potato here. And here's where we need to record some data. If you have a kitchen scale available. So I'm going to tare the weight of container number 1 and put in slice number 1. And I get 11.0 grams. And then for slice number 2, again, we want to tare the container. And weigh that. That is 9.5 grams. Okay, so now we are ready to add the fluids and start the timer. I'm going to add just plain tap water that's also come to room temperature into this first container. And then in the second container, got the salt water here. It's okay if some of the salt comes out of solution, as it cools, it will still be plenty salty. All right. And we will start a timer. And we will let this go for an hour. I'll probably check back in on this periodically, just so I'm recording this in Zoom and I don't want that Zoom meeting to time out. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes. I see the lab assistants have cleaned up a little bit, which is good. We'll keep checking in throughout this experiment, and it's going to run for an hour. But you don't need to watch the whole time. Okay, it looks like we're about halfway there. Got another half hour to go. Sure hope the lab assistants don't go for a swim. Looks like the lab assistants are watching the clock. Well, just 15 more minutes to go. Okay, looks like time's up. The lab assistants are telling me that it is been an hour. So I'm going to stop the timer. And we will put, we will take the potato pieces out of their solutions and weigh them. We'll start with number 1 in the water. And I'm going to actually blot this off before I weigh it. Okay. And this now weighs 11.9 grams. And this one started out at 11.0 grams. I'm going to put that right there. And then, again, I will blot the piece that was in the salt water. And weigh that. That is at 9.0 grams. And that started out at 9.5 grams. And one thing I'll notice that this, the water piece is much more turgid. It's holding its shape a lot better than it did when it started. And the saltwater piece is much less turgid. So it's kind of floppy, actually. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a control piece so we can kind of compare the saltwater and regular water pieces to what they were when they started. So next I'm gonna get a fresh slice this way. Okay. Okay. Centimeter. So this is a control piece, and it's a little bit floppy, but the the saltwater one seems to be floppier, right? But the water one is much crisper, much more turgid than the control piece. So that is it. That is the plant osmosis experiment.